What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Adam back at you again for hashtag rebound. It's day 113 down here in Houston, Texas, of just trying to figure out how to put a train wreck of a life back together after some pretty traumatic things over the last couple of years. And I'm sick. So if you hear it in my voice, it's not that big of a deal. It's the kind of cold or situation where I'm telling you that Alka-Seltzer cold and flu, plop plop fizz fizz, that is the best stuff for what I have right now. Other than stuffy head and stuffed up nose, and I probably should have taken a little bit of that before I sat down to do this video, but that's my best recommendation for if you have like a head cold. Man, that stuff works pretty good. And it works fast compared to popping pills and stuff like that. But I don't know. I posted a video earlier today, and this one's probably going to go up as another video for the same day. But the video that I posted earlier was just finishing up the last video that I started. And I have a little bit more time to myself here in the house, and I'm just gonna take some time to do another video because I've got time. And I just haven't had, I don't know how to explain it, but I need to get a win in the win column right now. It seems like I just have like a lot of anxiety right now about a number of things. And I think in some ways, I don't know, it's in some ways it's worse than what I was going through when I was homeless. But if I sit here and think back to the time that I spent homeless in Jamestown, I really don't think it compares because I think it was worse. I think it was worse back there. I think right now it's like being sick is adding to this. But it's paralyzing my ability to concentrate on things that need to be done. And then that just creates a snowball effect of the problems getting worse and the things that you need to get done piling on top of each other. And it won't be the first time that I'm dealing with this, and it certainly won't be the last. But I think that the more, if you're going through something like this, the more that you can try to recognize and acknowledge these kinds of things for what they are, it will help you start to kind of reframe things in your mind and just help you get past whatever mental blocks are holding you back. And so, for example, on Monday morning this week, I was able to say that I finally crossed off 3 things off of my to-do list that were stressing me out for about a week or more. One of them being the situation with trying to get the driver's license here in Texas. That was a big one. That was the biggest of the 3. The other 2 were just something that I had to do, 2 things that I had to do that weren't going to take more than 10, 15 minutes of my time, but for whatever reason, they were stressing me out a lot. And at the end of the moral of the story is, I got all 3 of those things crossed off Monday morning before I even hopped on my bicycle to go to work. And before I even left for work, 5 minutes after I crossed these things off my list, I just chose some random new thing to start worrying about and start coming up with the worst case scenario for. And the workings of my mind, my creative mind, were able to extrapolate those worries and worst case scenarios and, well, if this doesn't happen, then this is going to happen, and then that's going to lead to this, and that's going to lead to that, and all that. And I extrapolated that all the way to, this will be the reason I become homeless again. And it was just, I don't even know right now thinking about it, I don't even know what the thing was that I started worrying about. Because before I even got on my bike to leave the house, I was like, Adam, stop it. Just stop. This is what you do. Whatever it was. The reason I can't remember it now is because I was able to just stomp it out. Like, I recognized it for what it was. I do remember when I went to put my helmet on, I was walking over to grab my helmet in my bag, and I remember saying to myself, just, Adam, stop it. This is not real. This is just the thing that you do. This isn't actually real. Just put the kibosh on it. And so that was yesterday morning, and I remember going through this yesterday, but I don't remember what the thing was that came up in my mind that turned into this whole snowball effect of you're going to be homeless again because of it. It was some minor thing, and it wasn't something to really be worth worrying about. I'm trying to kind of see if I can pull it out of my mind as I sit in front of the camera, and I just can't remember what it actually was. But the reason for that, the reason why my memory's failing me right now, is because I was able to quash it and just stop worrying about it. It wasn't anything worth getting all worked up over. It's just, I feel like the homelessness, being thrown out into the street to be homeless and have to deal with that trauma after everything I had been through over the last couple of years, like that level of trauma, I think it can affect someone just as deeply as violence or something worse than violence. When you have somebody in your life that causes you to be homeless, it's not at the same level as actual physical violence. I don't think anybody would, I think everybody would agree with what I just said there. But the trauma of that thing is going to stick with you. And to be honest, no matter how well my life ever gets from here, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to go a day for the rest of my life without being terrified of ending up back in the streets. It don't matter. It don't matter if I have enough money to own 3 houses and 6 cars and all the things. In the back of my mind, I'm just going to be paranoid that I'm going to end up homeless again. And so that was yesterday. Like I said, this little thing I started worrying about turned into this whole, well, at least you'll be homeless in Texas where it's warm, right? And so I picked up that book that later on in the day, the book Jesus Calling from Sarah Young that I talk about all the time on this channel. This was a book that somebody introduced me to when I was in jail. I forget how many months into it I was, but I became friends with somebody, and he would pass around this book every day to a bunch of us. And so I didn't read it every single day. I still don't. But when I do, it seems to just line up with whatever I'm going through that day. And it did the same thing yesterday. In yesterday's entry, it said this: I am able to do far beyond all that you ask or imagine. Come to me with positive expectations, knowing that there is no limit to what I can accomplish. Ask my spirit to control your mind so that you can think great thoughts of me. Do not be discouraged by the fact that many of your prayers are yet unanswered. Time is a trainer, training you to wait upon me, to trust me in the dark. The more extreme your circumstances, the more likely you are to see my power and glory at work in the situation. Instead of letting difficulties draw you into worrying, try to view them as setting the scene for my glorious intervention. Keep your eyes and your mind wide open to all that I am doing in your life. And I thought that just nailed it. I mean, it's exactly what I was doing yesterday, just worrying about things that weren't worth worrying about, and knowing that, the more extreme the more extreme the situation gets, when the answers to the problems just literally fall out of the sky. Like God just reached down from the clouds and said, here you go, dude. Right in the nick of time. It says the more extreme your circumstances, the more likely you are to see my power and glory at work in the situation. The more likely, yeah, it definitely did. I can think of, right off the bat, that brings two thoughts to mind. One, the recent of how I got to Texas in the first place. I was homeless for 115 days, and then I get this phone call. It was before the 100. I was homeless for a total of 115 days, and then I left to come to Texas. About a week before I moved to Texas, I get a phone call from probation saying, we worked it out so that you can move to Texas. You can leave whenever you want. Just let us know your plan when you decide to pack up and go. And it was great because, as you know, if you watch these videos for a while, you know that I spent, well, it was about 45 days waiting for an answer from them the second time I tried to do it. I was in limbo. They weren't telling me where I would even be allowed to live when I was homeless. And I essentially had three different directions. I could stay in Jamestown, I could go to Pittsburgh, I could come to Houston. And so when I got that answer, definite answer, then it became, well, how am I going to get there? Because I really don't have any money. My friend down here, our original plan was that he was going to drive up here and get me and bring me back down. But that was several months before I was approved to come down here, and circumstances were completely different at the time I was approved. And so he was just kind of thinking like, hey, I can help you out. We can rent you a car or get you a plane ticket. And then, the probation officer said, well, we could probably get you a bus ticket if that helps you. Or, there were options being put in front of me. But as I'm sitting there paranoid about how am I going to do this, I'm walking across the park in Jamestown where I shoot these videos every day. And some guy's dog comes running up to me and jumps up at me and starts, licking me and saying hi. And I start petting the dog, and the guy who owns the dog comes up to apologize for the dog, and he ends up becoming a client of mine. And the next day, I had a check in my 1 or 2 days later, I had a check in my hand. Check was deposited at the bank. And I had enough money in the bank from that moment on to move down here. And not only move down here, but I was only in Texas for about 5 days when I met the probation officer for the first time. And he demanded that I pay all my fines right now. Like tomorrow, you have to have all your fines paid. And I hadn't made a single payment on any of these fines except for money that they took off my commissary. $25 toward a $1,400 fine had been paid so far. And so the money was in my hand to move to Texas, to get the rental vehicle, to do everything I needed to do. And after I got here, I was able to pay that fine, and I still had money left over for things like groceries and stuff. I mean, it was tight. It's not like it was a lot of money. It was just enough to get through it. And I was able to get what I needed to put a bicycle together so that when I got a new job and I hadn't been paid yet, I could put the bicycle together. It took like $350 just to get a bicycle going, to get my bicycling shoes and some other things like that, to have a reliable, means of transportation. And it all was there. And it came out of nowhere. It literally came out of nowhere. I was trying so hard to make things happen, but the thing that actually happened just popped out of the sky, like boom. I took a few steps in that direction, but the universe, God came running toward me. And, my experience with God's will it's more like if you're going the wrong direction, if you're going in a direction he doesn't want you to go, it doesn't matter how hard you try, it doesn't matter how much effort you put in, you're just going to be moving backwards, or you're not going to get anywhere. You're just going to be, it's going to be like spinning your tires when you're stuck in the sand. You're just digging yourself deeper and deeper into the sand, and your vehicle's, it's not going to go. It's not going to go anywhere. The harder you try to get that thing out without the right tools, without somebody coming to help you, if you will, you're done. And the harder you try to get it out, the worse it's going to get. You're getting more stuck. When it comes to going the right direction, it's the opposite. It's like if you take 2 steps in the direction that God wants you to go, all of a sudden he'll come running to meet you. You'll take 2 steps and he'll take 50 steps to come and get you and meet you where you are and give you what you need to get where you got to go. It's like you've got a mountain off in the distance. You take 3 steps, all of a sudden the mountain's right in front of you. It's like there. It's like warp. You just warped to it. It's like a shortcut almost. It just happens. And the other story that came to mind, when it says the more extreme your circumstances, the more likely you are to see my power and glory at work in the situation. I've shared this story before, but I owned 3 vehicles at one point, and they were all used. It's not like I was some high roller, flaunting my wealth or whatever. No, this car was this Mini Cooper that I sold. Excuse me. This Mini Cooper that I sold, it cost me $5,000. I sold it for $4,000 after I drove it for a handful of years. I did put money into it. It was when I sold the car, it was 20 years old. I mean, so a 20-year-old car is going to need some things done to it here and there. But anyway, I had 3 vehicles, and I didn't have a job. I was fired from a job where I worked. I was hired for a company. I was hired at a company in 2019, and I was hired. I could work from home. It wasn't officially a remote job, but it was a remote job. I could do whatever I want as long as I got the job done. So I was given autonomy to run my own show. And as long as I was bringing the results, that's all they cared about. And so it was a remote job. I worked from home. 2019. The reason I say that is because it wasn't some work from home job because now COVID is out and everybody's working from home. I was already working from home. And so in 2021, right before Christmas, I was fired from that job because I wouldn't take the vaccine. Wouldn't take the vaccine to keep my remote work from home job. The place turned into a mask-wearing Jim Jones Kool-Aid vaccine cult, and they fired me for not taking the shot. And so and because of the fact that I willfully disobeyed an order from the company, the state of Pennsylvania wouldn't give me unemployment. And so I was suffering. I was living off of credit cards for 4 months, and I didn't have a lot of money put away. When I was fired from that job, I was scraping by. Christmas fucking sucked that year. Everything sucked. And I knew that I could live up till I could pay my rent for the month of April and pretty much survive until April. But then sometime in April, I was going to run out of money and not be able to, I wasn't going to be able to make my payments. I wasn't going to be able to make rent for May. And I knew this back in December. And so now that's creeping up and creeping up and creeping up, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. I'm $10,000 in credit card debt now. And because I'm just offloading bills to credit cards and then making the minimum payments on the cards, when normally I would be paying bills with credit cards and then paying off the entire balance every month and just keeping the credit lines open. So anyway, I'm going through that. And so April gets here, and then March is here, middle of March. we're supposed to get a pretty nice batch of weather. And the snow is supposed to melt. And it had been a pretty hard, it was harsher than some of the other winters where I lived up in this area of Amish country about an hour north of Pittsburgh. And so normally I would drive this Mini Cooper throughout the winter whenever the roads weren't covered in ice. But there had been a span of over 2-3 months where the roads were just constantly covered in ice. Plus, I didn't have a job. I didn't have a reason to drive this car. So I didn't. And it sat for a couple of months. And now it's March. The weather's supposed to be nice. And I have 3 vehicles. And I woke up this one morning and I told somebody, 7 a.m. in the morning, I was like, I'm going to get up today. I'm going to go clean out the Mini Cooper. I'm going to take it to the car wash, get all my stuff out of it, take some photos of the inside and outside, and put it up for sale on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, wherever I can put it for sale. And try to get rid of that by the end of the month, because then the money I get from that, I'll be able to last a couple more months. I'll be able to squeak by. And it shouldn't be a hard car to sell. They're pretty desirable. So that's what I said at 7 in the morning. 9 in the morning, I get up out of bed. I'm getting my coffee. I'm getting started to kind of go through my day. Remember, I'm unemployed, so I wasn't in like a major rush. And so it's 9 a.m. I'm getting my coffee. I'm just getting, I'm just waking up to the world. Someone's knocking on my door, and I go and open the door, and it's the guy who mows my lawn every summer. And but there's still snow all over the ground, and it's supposed to get nicer by the end of the week, but not like mowing my lawn nice. And I just figured, well, he's just here to line up his business for the spring and fall or summer. And he just wants to make sure that all of his customers are lined up for the year. And he's probably just, that's probably what he's up to right now. And so that's, when I saw him standing there, that's the first thought that came to my mind. And when I opened the door, he looks at me and he goes, "Hey, I was in the neighborhood, and I just figured I'd stop over because I wanted to see if you wanted to sell that Mini Cooper that you've got." And I was like, well, I'm trying to hide the smirk on my face and the laughter that's going on inside, because I'm like dumbfounded by this. Literally 2 hours after I said, I think I'm going to sell the car, this guy shows up wanting to buy it. And so I played I really like that car, and it's a class. I was about to get classic license plates for it this year, and really, like, I was going to do some stuff to it, and I wanted to take it to this racetrack, and all these different things are, I'm just saying all this stuff, and I'm like, but I money's a little bit tight right now, and I could probably make, I could probably, let it go for the right price. And we kind of went back and forth, and he agreed to buy it. And so now I'm like, okay. And I was kind of like, is he really going to follow through with this? Well, I'm not kidding. I had just enough time to charge. The battery had gone dead from sitting for a couple of months. I was able to charge the battery, drive it down to the grocery store, pick up a few groceries, bring it back to my house, and get all of my personal possessions out of the car. And I barely had enough time to do that before he's back at my house with the money in hand, cash. And he's in a hurry. He's like, we got to get down to the notary before they close, and we can transfer the title and do all the paperwork. And I'm like, holy. So by the next morning, the car was gone. The title was gone. I had $4,000 cash in my hand just sitting there, and I'm dumbfounded. The car sold itself. I woke up that morning in a situation where I'm like, I need to get rid of this car. I have 3 vehicles. I don't need the vehicle. I bought it for a purpose a few years back, because I only had one vehicle, and I was putting a lot of miles on a relatively new vehicle, and I didn't want to run that vehicle into the ground. So I bought the Mini Cooper specifically for going back and forth to Pittsburgh, because I was going back and forth to Pittsburgh a lot, and it was 70 miles each direction, and I wanted to save a little bit on gas, and this car got better mileage than the Jeep that I was driving at the time. And so I had a few other reasons, and it served its purpose, but at this point, I think it may have been more of a burden to try and keep 3 cars on the road, especially when I didn't have a job and I could use the money. So I woke up this one day, and I'm like, I think I'm going to sell the car. And I thought, it's like midpoint of March. I thought, in the next 2 weeks, I'd be lucky to sell it. But I had until the end of April before I'd really be desperate money-wise. So I figured a month and a half is enough time to sell this car, even if I have to get lowballed to the point where I'm just getting rid of it for an extra month's rent. You know what I mean? And then 2 hours later, do on the door, and the car sold. I did nothing. I did nothing but wake up with the consciousness of, I'm going to sell this car, and the buyer just shows up. Like, come on, man. That's not like, you can't tell me that that's not divine intervention there or some sort of thing like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just not coincidence at that point. And I've got so many stories like this. And these are the stories that I'm keeping in my mind as I'm going through what I'm going through right now, because right now, today, granted, I'm a little bit sick, and so that, that helps keep the positivity away. And it's my motivation's just up and down and just all over the place right now. But these are the stories that tell me, and there's more stories, and these are the things that just tell me, you know what, it's going to be all right. Things are going to happen the way they need to happen, and they're going to happen when they need to happen. And the more ridiculous your situation gets, and the more absurd, the more beyond coincidental that the solution presents itself. Like, I need to find a place to live right now, and I'm getting a little bit antsy about that. And I just have this feeling in the back of my head that the answer is going to be, it's not going to be what I think, and it's going to come out of nowhere. And it's I don't know. I just have that kind of feeling where it's going to happen in the same way the Mini Cooper happened, and the way the guy at the park with his dog that allowed me to move here and have the money to get set up and all. I just feel like it's going to be one of those situations that the things I need to take care of over the next month or two are just going to take care of themselves in a way that I'm not going to be able to say it came from me. I'm not going to be able to say it was all due to my hard work and perseverance. I'm going to basically say it was God, because there was no other explanation for it. I made an intention to do this or that, but then boom, God just showed up and said, okay, I'm here. Here you go. Here's the keys. And so, this entry from January 6th of Sarah Young, and, saying time is a trainer, teaching you to wait upon me, to trust me in the dark. The more extreme your circumstances, the more likely you are to see my power and glory at work in the situation. And instead of letting difficulties draw you into worrying, which I've been doing lately, I've been doing it more than I should. I should, like it says, I should view them as setting the scene for God's glorious intervention to show up. Keep my eyes and my mind open to all that he's doing in my life, instead of just finding some little nugget to worry about. I crossed 3 things that were stressing me out off my to-do list, and instead of sitting down and being like, that doesn't that feel better, which it did, I immediately just find the next thing. Picked up the next thing on this list of 500 things and start worrying about the next one, like it's this big giant problem, and like it's going to be the reason why everything falls apart. And but by acknowledging it for what it was yesterday and just telling myself to stop because whatever it is not real. Like I said, right now I still can't remember what it was that I was worrying about yesterday because it was insignificant and it wasn't real. And so, each entry in this book from Sarah Young, it's her. She's basically writing this book as if Jesus is having a conversation with you every day. This is what Jesus has to say to you today. But she was inspired by different verses in the Bible when she's writing these things. And she lists at the end of each daily entry what Bible verses that she's pulling this stuff from and where she got her inspiration from for that entry. And I don't always read those, but I think I'm going to read them for today. There's a few of them. The first one is the book of Ephesians, chapter 3, verse 20 and 21, where it says, "Now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all that we ask or think, according to the power at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen." And, I think Paul, he is the king of run-on sentences in the Bible. I have a hard time reading Paul's writings because every sentence is the length of 2 paragraphs, and it's just a comma and a comma and a comma. So I get lost in his books. But what he's telling us here is that God is able to do far more abundantly than what we ask for and what we think he can do. He can do more than that. And that is just evident in when he does come to work in my life. He comes at me in ways that I could have never imagined. The solutions to different problems just show up. I told you a story a while ago about how I had a freelance client, and he ended up being my biggest client that I had for the 6 years that I did freelance for a living. He was a vice president at PNC Bank, who I happened to do some work for when I worked for another company. And I just randomly ran into him on the incline on my way home from work one day in Pittsburgh. Had a conversation. A few months down the road, he sees me at the grocery store with my daughter, waiting at a bus stop, and we had a brief conversation. And before I knew it, he left to go home. He was walking. A few minutes later, he shows up and pulls in front of me with his car and asks me if I want to ride home. And we had this conversation on the ride home, and before I knew it, I was doing work for him. And this opened up opportunities, and just that whole thing came out of nowhere. And it ended up being my biggest client for 6 years. So God will just drop these things in front of you. I could come up with 100 examples without having to try very hard. A next biblical inspiration for her entry was Romans chapter 8, verses 6. "For to set the mind on the flesh is death, but to set the mind on the spirit is life and peace." And to me, that just, it's the whole example of, if you try to go your own, remember when I just tried to tell you all, when you try going your own way, or when you're going the way that, is contrary to what God wants you to do, you're just spinning your tires in the sand, and you're just digging yourself deeper into the dirt, and you're stuck, and you're not going to go anywhere. And no matter how hard you push on the gas and how much gas you burn and how much you rock that thing back and forth, you're just getting yourself more stuck. But when you set your mind on the Spirit and you go the direction he wants you to go, you get life and peace. The answers to your problems just appear. And so that's what he's trying to teach me right now. And I hear it, but I wake up every day and I go through these periods of anxiety every single day. It comes and goes. It's not constant, but it's a battle. It's a battle that I'm fighting every single day in my own mind. And there's two more inspirations that she chose for this entry. Another one's from the Old Testament, the book of Isaiah, chapter 40, verse 30 and 31. It says, "Even the youths shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." And, I think it's just, that speaks a little bit to, the older you get, the wiser you get, hopefully. When you're young and strong, you think you can do everything on your own. Every time and it just goes right back to when you think you can do everything on your own, you're going to end up getting stuck in the sand. You're going to end up, no matter how hard and how much energy you put into it, if it's not what you're supposed to be doing, you're not going to get anywhere. But, those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They'll mount up with wings like eagles, and they shall run and not be weary, and walk and not faint. He'll help you. He'll get you to the finish line if you trust him. And, it's that trust. It's that trust fall. It's like, if you have your best friend say, "Do you trust me if you fall backwards that I'll catch you?" No, no, I don't. I wouldn't trust my best friend with that, and I wouldn't even, it's not even because I feel like my friend would drop me on purpose, but what if, what if I'm too fat and he can't hold me up? So, so the other piece of inspiration here from her book is the book of Revelation, chapter 5 and verse 13, where it says, "And I heard every creature in heaven and on earth and under the earth and in the sea and all of them, all that is in them, saying, to him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be blessing and honor and glory and might forever and ever." And yeah, I think that's it, man. It's like, just put your faith in God, and he'll get you through. I don't know how. And I know some people have been in a hell of a lot worse situation than I'm in right now, or that I've ever been in. And if I'm having a hard time being faithful when I'm going through the worst time of my life at times, I wonder what I would be like if things were 100 times worse. Would I be able to keep that faith? I don't know. And then on the flip side, another thing that I'm quote unquote worried about, it's not the same kind of worry, but there's another thing that I think about. And I'm thinking about, like, on top of the negative stuff I'm worried about, is that what if God does lift me out of this mess and I start being successful again, and I surpass the level of success that I had earlier in life, and I don't necessarily mean monetarily, but just life starts going back together and everything starts turning out better than it was before all this nightmare started. What if I get to that point where things are just all around better, financially, health-wise? I'm in the best health of my life. I'm in the best relationship I've ever had, etc. The relationships with my kids are good, better than they've ever been. What if all these things start falling into place? And then I stop caring about God, and I start saying something to the effect of, like, "All right, thanks, God, but I'll take it from here. I can take it from here. I'm good now. I don't need to pray anymore. I got this now. Thanks for the help, but I'm good now. I'll take it from here." And that's what got me sent to federal prison in the first place. If I were going to church and listening to the word of God, I would not have been in the place mentally to where I lashed out like I did that day on Gab. I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have been there. I may have been angry. I may have been upset about a lot of the things going on, but there would have been something in the back of my mind, even if it was something like, "Man, I really don't want the people I go to church with to read this." You know what I mean? Like, something would have stopped me from going to that level. Do I think I deserve to go to prison for 2 years over some social media posts? No. No, that was political. That was all part of this. We're going to take anybody who supports Donald Trump and throw them in prison for anything we can get them in prison for. Even if it's a 75-year-old woman who got ushered into the Capitol on January 6th after the doors were kicked open and the police were just like, come on in, it's a big party. And then all of a sudden, a year later, the FBI is kicking down your door to take you off to fucking prison for it. So I don't know, man. If I had been going to church, if I had been, talking to God regularly, but it's one of these things that we talk about as Christians is very easy to go crying to God when things are going bad in your life. But when things are going good, it's very easy to just forget about it and to stop, giving thanks where thanks is due. And stop asking God for help when you don't think you need any help, right? And so that's what got me in the situation that I got in. That's a big part of it. And let's see, I was sitting around last night. I think it was last night. Well, I watched this over a couple of days because I have a hard time when I sit down to unwind at the end of the day. I can't really make it through a 2-hour movie. So it usually takes me a couple of days or more to get through a movie. But I watched this movie called The Order. And it's about this guy and his merry little band of white supremacists out in Washington and Utah back in the day. It's based on a true story. I can't remember, what was the guy's name? I can't remember. Whidbey Island is where this, the FBI took down this guy and his band of followers after a string of bank robberies and some bombings and, people died. But there's a scene at the end of this movie where the FBI is raiding their final hideout. And this was like, I almost couldn't watch it because it was like flashback city for me. Except in this movie, the FBI burned the guy alive in his hideout after he refused to come out after a period of time. Just like they did to the people at Waco in Texas back in the mid-90s when they burned up all the women and children that were in there, because, that's how the feds roll. They burn people alive in their homes. And, I'm watching this and I'm like, I'm surprised they didn't burn me and my son alive that night. I'm really surprised the more I think about it. Or just kill me outright like they probably intended to do when they showed up. They all come to my house all Rambo'd up, driving a fucking tank through the front door. And, I just wonder what kind of divine intervention saved me that night. I don't know, man. I really didn't know anything was going on. I was asleep. I was mentally, when I went to bed that night, I was gone. I took my son out to dinner because I didn't have the energy to cook. And when we got home from that, I fell asleep in a chair at 7 in the evening. It was August. The sun hadn't even set yet, and I'm falling asleep in a chair. And so I eventually put myself to bed. And so it took, even when I heard all the noise from upstairs, it took a minute or two to even register something was happening. And so the first thing I did was, when I realized that that's the sound of breaking glass, something's going on, I grabbed my gun and ran upstairs. And it's a miracle I didn't get shot that night. I don't know, man. So I read Jesus Calling again today. It's the next day. And this kind of goes along with what I was just saying. And today's entry said that it's impossible to praise or thank me too much. As it is written, I inhabit the praises of my people. Sometimes your adoration is a spontaneous overflow of joy in response to radiant beauty or rich blessings. And at other times, your praise is more disciplined and measured, an act of your will. I dwell equally in both types of praise. Thankfulness also is a royal road to draw near me. A thankful heart has plenty of room for me. When you thank me for many pleasures I provide, you affirm that I am God, from whom all blessings flow. When adversity strikes and you thank me anyway, your trust in my sovereignty is a showpiece in invisible realms. Fill up the spare moments of your life with praise and thanksgiving. This joyous discipline will help you live in the intimacy of my presence. And so, that's basically goes right along with what I was saying. You gotta give thanks to God, not just when and ask Him for help, not just when things are going bad, but give Him thanks and also ask Him to guide your actions when things are going well. Because that tendency to come crawling to God, it's like a kid. It's like a kid who, an immature kid who decides I'm going to do what I want. And I saw this video of a real little kid on a ski slope. This kid probably was like 4 years old. I saw some people jumping off a ramp, and the mom was like, don't you dare do that. And the kid was like, no, I don't want to do that anymore. And then as the mom turned around, the kid took a bolt and went straight for the ski ramp. And then the kid went flying off the ramp and landed on his face. And well, then who's he crying to? Mommy, come help me. Right? Come help me. Even though I'm a big boy, I can do this. I do what I want. Just leave me alone. I got this. And then he falls flat on his face. Well, now is the time he's crying out for his mom. And that's kind of how we are as people. We, I got this, God, don't worry, I got this. And then I fall flat on my face and I'm like, oh, I need God now. Yeah, so, thank Him when things are going bad. I mean, even if it's thanking Him that things aren't worse. And also be thankful for the things He's yet to do that He's going to have to do. And when things are going well, be thankful for it. But also, pray for guidance and pray for Him to, keep you on the level. And I'm going to read one more entry and then I'm going to let you go. But this entry popped up. I was kind of scanning through my notes about this topic of anxiety that I've jotted down over several weeks. And I glanced at all these Jesus calling snippets, and as soon as I saw this, I wasn't really reading them, but I read this one, and I thought it was odd because, well, I'm just going to read it and you'll see why. This one's back in November 21st, and it says, "Thank me throughout this day for my presence and my peace. These are gifts of supernatural proportions. Ever since the resurrection, I have comforted my followers with these messages. Peace be with you, and I will be with you always. Listen as I offer you my peace and presence in full measure. The best way to receive these glorious gifts is to thank me for them. It is impossible to spend too much time thanking and praising me. I created you first and foremost to glorify me. Thanksgiving and praise put you in proper relationship with me, opening the way for my riches to flow into you. As you thank me for my presence and my peace, you appropriate my richest parts." And I thought this was the one I stopped to read, and when you get to the second paragraph, it is impossible to spend too much time thanking and praising me. Well, today's entry was, it is impossible to praise or thank me too much. And so that's the message I was supposed to hear today, because it was put right in front of my face twice. And I'm just supposed to stop being worried about all this stuff and be thankful for not just what he's done, but be thankful that he's there. And I know he's there. I know God has my back. And even my friend and I live here with him. We talk a lot. We're both sick right now, so we've been kind of, off in our own space, watching, he had to work today. I had to do some things. But we're both trying to get over this sickness. And so we're not like hanging out and chatting as much. But the last time we hung out and talked for a while, which was a few days ago, one of the things that he said and I agreed with and was also basically saying myself was, God didn't bring you down to Houston just to throw you on your face and rub your face in the dirt again. He's got something for you. He's got some plan for you. None of us know what it is right now, but he didn't just bring you down here for nothing. He didn't bring you down here to make, to make you fail again. And so that's what I was saying it and agreeing with it, and he was saying it. This was part of a longer conversation that we were having. But that's just from my experience. I'm just talking about what where I'm coming from and what's going on here. But maybe some of the things I'm talking about apply to you. I know I'm far from the only one who sits and gets all worked up and nervous about things that you shouldn't get worked up and nervous about. I think it's perfectly understandable to go through that kind of stuff, especially when you've been through some trauma. What does a dog do? A dog that, if you go to the animal shelter and you get a dog that's been abused by previous owners, that dog's never going to fully trust you. It's always going to have this like it's always expecting to get kicked in the ribs, even though you could be the nicest owner and never treat this dog badly. It's always going to have this it's either going to do one of two things: cower and hide and get all nervous and back off and act like you're about to hit it or something, especially if it sees any kind of anger or raising of your voice, or even if you're not, say you're talking to somebody in anger, you're arguing with somebody, you're arguing with somebody and the dog's going to get all stressed out because it's going to trigger that memory of the trauma that it's been through. Or the dog's going to get violent and growl and lash out and bite somebody. I've seen this before. I know somebody who had a dog like this, who the previous owners abused this dog, and even though they were super friendly to the dog, and for the most part this dog was very chill and very cool, but this dog could turn on a dime if it sensed anything that triggered that memories that it had of being abused back in the day. And this is something that was always going to be with the dog. It was always going to have problems because of what had happened to it in the past. And so, I know that there's a lot of people who are dealing with that kind of stuff, and I'm far from alone. And so I can tell you from my own experience, and this isn't the first time I've had to do this, but if you are finding yourself getting all worried, all wound up about something that is not reality, so you can take some small thing about you're stuck in traffic, you're on your way to work and you're stuck in traffic, and maybe there's an important meeting going on and you're going to be late, and you start turning that into, I'm going to be late for this meeting and I'm going to get in trouble and I'm going to get fired, and then I'm going to lose my job, and then I'm going to come home, from getting fired, and my wife is going to leave me because I'm not bringing the money home anymore, and then I'm going to have to pay child support and alimony. And you can see where this is going. And all it was you were stuck in traffic on the way to work. And the reality is, okay, I can think of a specific one where I was stuck in traffic and it was bad weather. And it was an important meeting. and I was kind of in a weird place at this company, and I was really late, like really late. Like the traffic was at a standstill, and I'm thinking like I was more than an hour late to the meeting, let alone work. And I was nervous about it, and I was doing that in my mind. Oh, I'm going to be late. I'm going to lose my job. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. That's going to happen. That's going to happen. When I got to work, I walked into the room where the meeting was supposed to be. I was the first one there. Within 20 minutes, a few more people come filing in. Within half an hour to an hour, everybody was there, but I was the first one there. Everybody got stuck in the traffic. Everybody was dealing with the problems caused by the weather that day. And everybody was, the whole thing, it was nothing. At the end of the day, there was absolutely nothing to worry about. I was the first one at the meeting. I actually had more time to prepare what I wanted to present at the meeting because I was there first, and I had half an hour to an hour to go through all my presentation slides and fix some things and add things that I didn't have time to add. And so when it came time to give my presentation, I was on point, more so because of the fact that we were all late. So it actually worked out better for me that day, getting stuck. But when I was in the traffic, I was like, oh, this is going to lead to this, that's going to lead to that. I'm going to end blah, blah, blah. And before you know it, I'm broke and homeless and, I can't ever get another job again and all this ridiculous stuff. And when you catch yourself doing that, the best thing to do, and this is something that was taught to me a long time ago, don't fight it. Don't just acknowledge it for what it is. Like just say, you know what? You need to stop doing this. And you just acknowledge it for what it is. This is what you're doing. You're just worrying about something. It's not real. It's not reality. Yes, you're going to be late to work. That's it. Everything else that you're adding to this is just the world of make-believe. And it's not real. And there's a very small chance of any of this stuff coming to fruition. And like I said, that particular day, I was the first one at work to arrive when I was well over an hour late, not just to work, but I was an hour late to the meeting. The meeting probably wouldn't have started. I think it was like a 9 o'clock meeting. I was supposed to be there at 8:30, 8:30, something like that. It was like 10:30 when I got to the office. It was crazy bad. It was one of the worst traffic jams in years. But it wasn't just me. It was every single person that came into work that day was going through the same thing. And I happened to get there first, let alone. So it wasn't a big deal. At the end of the day, like I said, it actually worked out in my favor that everything happened the way it did. But when I was sitting in that traffic jam, those were the thoughts going through my mind. And that's just another small example of how sometimes you can just do that. You can just take some dumb things, a circumstance that's totally out of your control, and you can turn it into this whole thing about how it's going to completely ruin your life. And to be honest, sometimes the things work out better for you. And I have to learn that. I still have to learn that. I've told you about how the day I got released from prison, I got stuck in Bridgeport, Connecticut with, nothing but a pair of shorts and a crappy prison zip up. No money, no ID, no cell phone, no phone. All I had was a bus ticket for a bus that they never gave me a chance to make. And, I've told that story at least 4 times. But the point of the matter is, I did freak out about it. I was in a panic state. I mean, this is my first day out of prison, and this is what I'm up against. And Didn't need that. I didn't need that day. But when I was able to figure it all out, and I don't think it was just, it wasn't just me. I was lucky enough to find a stranger who let me borrow a phone for almost an hour. And I was lucky enough to have somebody to call and help me with this. And then I was lucky enough to be stranded somewhere where I could walk to a probation office. A federal probation office building was right down the road. And when it all was said and done, I was able to, when I got back to Buffalo, New York at 7 in the morning and had my original travel plan gone without a hitch. I wouldn't have been in Buffalo until 2 in the afternoon. So somehow, I don't even know how, somehow, because of the fact that I got stranded there, I got home 5 hours early, or more than that, 7 hours early. Because I got stranded in Bridgeport, Connecticut with no phone, no money, no ID, and all of that, somehow that turned into me getting home 7 hours early. Now, how does that happen? So these are the types of things I got to keep in my mind when I'm doing this mental worrying too much nonsense. And just remind myself of all these times that you get worried and all worked up about something, but then the thing that you're worried about ends up being better for you. The results end up being, but it's the trauma of because every now and then the worst thing does happen. I got out of prison and immediately things with my ex were so crazy that I immediately thought I was going to be thrown out to the street and be homeless. And even the people I was talking to about it were like, no, she's not that bad of a person. And I'm like, I don't know. I have a bad feeling about this. I have a real bad feeling about this. And I'm walking around on broken glass and eggshells and basically anything that you can think of where you take one wrong step and the whole thing comes crashing down. And there wasn't anything I could do about it. This was, she had this planned out in advance that this is how it was going to go down. I don't know. I think she just waited for an opportunity for something she could use to justify something she already wanted to do from day one. And without feeling like something she could use to justify it for herself. As I'm not a bad person because I gave him every chance or whatever. But this was the plan before I even came home from prison. That this was how... I just know that was... It's not worth talking about, but the point is every now and then the bad thing does happen that you're worried about, even if you can see it coming from a mile away. And it's like those are the things that stick with you, the bad things. Let's say I'm worried about 500 things, and only one thing out of the 500 comes true. There's 499 things that I was worried about that turned out to be nothing to worry about. But I was worried about them just as much as the one thing that actually happened. But the one thing that actually happened sticks with you. And you carry that with you. You forget about the 499 times that the thing you're worried about didn't come to be. But that one thing that did, that's the one that you dwell on. Time and time and time again, and then you have a collection of all of these things, the 1 out of 500 that did happen, the one thing that did go wrong out of hundreds of things that could have gone wrong, and you just collect the ones that did, and you put them in like a little basket, and then you carry that basket around and say, see, every time things always go wrong, and that's what we do. I'm not the only one that does this. And so I'm just trying to tell you guys what helps me when I'm going through it. And this, honestly, I would say in the last, for the month of December and so far into January, this has probably been my number one thing that I'm working on. And the thing that helps me the most to stop doing that, even though I'm continuing to do it, But the thing that's helping me the most make improvements and get past it is to just keep reminding myself that none of these things that you're making up in your head are real until they become real. But until then, it's just a bunch of garbage. It's not real. It's not truth. It's not reality. I was worried that I wasn't going to get a Texas driver's license until July or August, and then extrapolating 10 different consequences of what's going to happen to my life because of that. And now I have a Texas driver's license. Granted, it did take some extra weeks, but I have it. And I'm waiting for it to come in the mail. And here's the thing, I'm waiting for the thing to come in the mail. And my mind has been going around like, well, what if it goes to the wrong address? Or what if it doesn't come in the mail for another 3 months because they're so stupid and slow at the DMV? And what if? But I can sit back and say, okay, just cut the crap, dude, and stop worrying about things that, like, you're wasting so much energy on this. Just focus on something you can control. And so that's the advice that I have for today. I'm over an hour. I'm going to hit stop. I'm going to upload this one, and the next time I have the place to myself, I'll probably have another video ready for you all. So I hope this was helpful to some of you. If you made it this far, thanks. Click on some of the links below if you want to follow me in other places and support this channel. And with that, I'm just going to say peace out until we talk again.